So from here to here is atlas. Now you have axis C3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You understand your range of motion, the lower neck should only be really used at the end of the range of motion. She's hitting the wire down there because the hole changes in size when you rotate.
And she's doing all her motion there.
And she's moving too much in the lower neck. Now, when the curve is in the neck, it does a couple things. This model's not 100% accurate. I wish they made these models better. So if you notice here on the lower neck, see how the spinous has, it's called bifid. Kind of looks like a butt.
Okay.
Ow. Get you, Ed.
Well, for the last 6 weeks, started with pain across my shoulders. Ended up traveling down the left side of my back, down my arm, and then turned into the tingling numbness in this arm, and my face. Lots of pain, severest pain I've ever had.
And it sort of began, I think you told me a few things at work. They had you sitting in a certain position and then helping someone move.
Well, in my job, I'm in a leaned over position. I also held a baby, and I also was doing a lot of research with heavy books and writing. So I was in a hunched over position. And then I've been helping my sister with her husband, and that's moving some medical equipment.
And that's sort of when it started more after the moving or throughout?
All of that has been happening at the same time, and so it's just gotten progressively more intense.
Okay, and so these x-rays were taken when?
That's been about 3 weeks now.
Okay, so I know we've had MRI from years ago, and we already know that you have lower neck disc injuries, and with the x-ray we can sort of at least see the bones. And a couple things that are going on is that we have stenosis. There's the narrowing of the disc in the lower neck, and then there is some bone spurring that affects the canal. And so both of those things together, I would say more because of that disc height loss. See the normal discs up here, and then 1, 2 vertebrae are a little, half the size that they should be, so that the disc, I showed you all this, but the disc supports open the hole that the nerve goes through. So as that disc gets thinner, the hole the nerve goes through gets smaller. And so you're sort of describing almost like electrical.
Yes.
Almost like you're hitting your funny bone down the arm. All the nerves in the lower neck connect together to form the brachial plexus. So the nerves are one long strand all the way down to your finger. And so if you hit the wire here, if you hit your funny bone, they form the ulnar, median, and radial nerves
Is that
in
what
your
the
arm.
yellow is?
Right, so these are the nerves. So the bundles of nerves here in the lower neck all form the 3 nerves that go down into your arm. Whether we hit the nerve here or we hit the nerve, like say in your funny bone, they're one long continuous wire. So most of the time the nerves are underneath muscle. There's a few areas where they're exposed, like the funny bone, where you get that electrical feeling. So the disc is easier to see in the lower back just for size comparison, but the disc supports open the hole. And then also when you bring your head down, it makes everything sort of swell. It opens up the nerve hole a little bit and gives you relief. And then when you get out of a bent forward position, now you try to come back, everything's swollen. So I know the other day you were feeling a little better, but then you went and read for a little bit. And then I know you were trying to keep things elevated, but I think we were a little bit flexed, and then everything was going into your face a little bit. And
even my legs that day.
So the sitting, same kind of idea. We're supposed to have a curve in our lower back, and when we sit, and I know I've worked on your back the other day, and I was showing you there's a spot here in your middle back that concerns me, that is going to cause leg issues. So we have a spot down here we're going to check out again, and then the areas above and below the lower neck are the most responsible. So what happens is if the upper back, the ribs pop up because the head angles forward. So the ribs will be attached here on the sides of these vertebrae here. So when you round forward, you see how the ribs kind of rise up a little bit? And when the ribs rise, the transverse process rises up, the rib rises up, and that stiffens this area. It impinges the thoracic outlet, we call it, and so there's pressure on these nerves. So there is benefit to working on pushing the rib down. I call that one of the 3 components of how we fix this. We got to get these ribs down. The curve needs to be in your neck, and we've talked about that Denerol and what that does in helping restore the curve to your neck, loosening the atlas. So notice even on this model how the model doesn't really turn much in the lower neck, but then here at the top, you see how much range of motion the atlas has. So if we have a functioning atlas, the lower neck is not disturbed to the same level that if this area is stiff, now when you turn, you're turning more down here on these lower neck discs. That inflames the joints. So the joint is that surface right there where that surface contacts that. If that joint gets inflamed or swollen, you see how the nerve is right next to the joint capsule. So that can inflame and inflame the joint. That's what we're doing with our icing. We're also trying, it's harder to get to the disc on the front, but both structures kind of between a rock and a hard place sandwich the nerve that's in between. So we want to take as much stress off your lower neck. You know, when you're home, let's leave the lower neck alone, no massage, no adjustments on that lower neck. Work above and below, and then try to calm down the tissue that the nerves are traveling in. So sometimes, I know at the beginning you said you were okay when you were laying down, but then when you got up, it was worse.
And the zing would start immediately.
And then it just progressed to a point where now it's just zinging all the time, whether you're up, down, or up, you know,
Right.
laying down or up. So what that means is that now you have the actual tissue that the nerves are sitting in is now so inflamed that it doesn't matter if you're against gravity or not. The nerves are sitting in that acidity. And we've done a few visits now at home where we've cleaned out that channel now. We got we'll see some inklings of the gua sha mark still on your shoulder, but I think we might not get too much out today because we've already gotten that first big wave of cleaning that we've done. And as that mark won't be able to come out anymore, the tissue will get cleaner, and then we can, the process of getting the curve back in your neck and then permanently stretching these ribs down takes, really, the beginning of it is 3 months. It's 3 months on that neck dental roll we talked about, and it's time, almost like orthodontistry, to stretch that curve. She's got a little bit of reversal here. There's a little bit of a flexion here, so it rounds like that, and then it's straight, and then it rounds. That's actually flexed here.
Can you see the bone spur on there?
That's right at the tip of my pen is where the bone spurs are in your lower neck. That's going to cause what we call canal stenosis. The canal, because the back side of the canal is right here. That would be the back side. The front side is the back of the vertebrae. And the spinal cord comes down this tube. So we call it canal stenosis when the bones or a disc, and I think I've seen your MRI, there's some disc in here also pressing in, but we can't see on x-ray. There's bone spur and disc occupying space that shouldn't be occupied by anything. There should just be a cerebral spinal fluid nourishing your spinal cord lying in this tube. When there's no curve in your neck, the cables are held taut like uncooked spaghetti noodles. They don't have any flexibility. So when you turn, just look right here look right here in the lower neck here. Look right there. See how when you rotate, the hole changes? Mm-hmm. See, it's bigger there,
Yep.
smaller, and then look at that pinch the nerve there. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you're turning, that's when you're whacking, you're hitting the nerve right there. That's what causes the electrical. Now,
So like now I'm like looking at you and my arms going zing, zing.
right, because you're turning.
You want to, straight.
So you're turning, and can you see that crown there? When you look right there, you see how when I turn the vertebrae, now you shouldn't be turning here when you rotate your neck very much at all anyway, because most of the turning again should happen up here. So when you turn, this should be isolated and non-mobile until you're at the very end of your range of motion. So the lower neck is supposed to function from about 75 degrees to 80 degrees. You're supposed to have about 80 degrees each way of rotation. So you have 80 degrees this way, 80 degrees this way. Does that make sense? So
Yep.
160 total. 45 each way should only happen at the atlas. And then you progressively recruit the lower neck as you go through your range of motion. So from here to here is atlas. Now you have axis, C3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You understand your range of motion, the lower neck should only be really used at the end of the range of motion. So you shouldn't be able to zing that here in the middle. Does that make sense? Because it shouldn't be moving at all.
Well, that's what you said to me. You said your atlas isn't turning the way it's supposed to.
That's what allowed you to overstress your lower neck, and that's what's causing, like I said, if you can see that, Carlin, when you rotate, she's hitting the wire down there because the hole changes in size when you rotate.
And she's doing all her motion there.
And she's moving too much in the lower neck. Now, when the curve is in the neck, it does a couple things. This model's not 100% accurate. I wish they made these models better. So if you notice here on the lower neck, see how the spinous it's called bifid. Kind of looks like a butt, right? Can you see that, Carlin? On the lower neck one there's like two spinuses. Mm-hmm. So in the normal anatomy, all of these vertebrae are bifid, and they actually interlock with each other. So the top part is one piece, and that locks in with the lower part when there's a curve in your neck. So they all interlock with themselves, meaning that you can't actually rotate them because there's an arch in your neck, which then frees up any ability to pinch the nerve in the lower neck. Additionally, the lower neck wire is held loose. So now, even if you're turning, the nerve has the freedom to move away from anything that would hit the nerve. So those are the two components of why it's mandatory that we have a curve in our neck, along with another reason, the disc is depressurized. So if you see there in the lower neck, the disc is unweighted when you have a curve in your neck. When I take the curve out of the neck, the disc is pressurized, which then causes the dehydration, the desiccation, and then the shifting of the nucleus posterior, which they have on this model down here. So the nucleus is in the center, and when you compress the front side, the disc starts to shift posteriorly towards the nerve. And that's what we have. I know we've seen an MRI, and we've confirmed that with an MRI. We have disc involvement also that we can't see on the x-ray. So we have bone spurring that we can see. There's disc injury. So we have to not adjust your lower neck anymore. That's no massage, no adjustments. The area is inflamed. It's like a cut on your skin or a sprained ankle. It doesn't benefit from further motion. It was the hypermobility in the first place that causes the injuries that are in there. So we want to restore the functionality of the surrounding areas as best we can, and then put the curve back in your neck as best we can. That's the orthodontic part of this care. We have to spend, it's a diminishing returns curve. 3 months you'll have a 50% benefit, and then in the next 9 months it's another 25%. And it gets harder and harder to get more and more curve. You'll go from 0 to 20 degrees in 3 months if you do that dental roll every day. Numbness is a nerve checking out, so you can have two things going on. The electrical is the wire being hit on the side. If you get numbness permanently, it can be from that nerve being choked, but it also can be from that canal stenosis. So the spinal cord doesn't have any feeling, and when there's pressure on the spinal cord, it damages the spinal cord and can cause numbness that can become permanent if that isn't retracted. Whatever's pressing on the spinal cord needs to be relieved. Otherwise, there can be permanent damage.
And in my head, I told you touched today, so that was
right.
encouraging.
So she's doing the dental roll on the smaller version, but we're going to work on the depth, getting that arch in your neck. Your neck is starting to comply to the mold, so part of that is getting the inflammation out of the posterior structures so they can close down. When they're all inflamed, your range of motion is decreased, so you can't actually sink into the mold.
Yeah, I couldn't look up before without going numb at all.
And what will happen is, as this position becomes easier, then life in neutral is going to be easy. It's like a stress test. The more we can handle a more difficult position on the spine, the easier it is to be in neutral. This is why most people typically just lean forward and lean away, and that allows the problem to grow. You feel better perhaps if you're forward, and then when you come up, it's it's difficult. So the more you bend forward, temporarily you'll feel better, and then you'll never be able to stay in neutral. You'll have to stay, and that's how people get stuck in those bent forward positions, because they now have to be there. Everything is so swollen, the discs are so bulged, the bone spurs are so large that we actually can't come back. When we bring you back, part of why we're able to start bringing you back, and why we spent a few visits before like the first visit, I think I just adjusted you and did elbow work, and we didn't do any gua sha, we didn't do any stretching until the second time. I wanted to see just how much tenderness it was just from being adjusted, and then knowing that your upper neck is moving. When we put the curve in your neck, I want it happening up here, not by making this area do the bending, but by your upper neck functioning. And so you want to ensure that the upper neck is unlocked and the whole spine is moving before we do molding. This is why you have to go to a chiropractor, because I can't go on television to sell dental rolls. It makes sense, because you have to have your spine prepared for the stretching, and they're meant to be used in concert with adjustments and massage as tools to work up the ladder for improving your alignment.
Within the first 2 days, my face stopped being numb. This arm stopped being numb for the most part. Okay, I did have a sit back when I was reading the other day, and I thought I had the book up where it needed to be, and I had something behind my back. But you said if I was down even slightly, and I read for 45 minutes. If I was down even slightly, you said my shoulders were probably hunched, and everything. I felt it in my face again, this arm, not the pain, just the numbness, okay? So since then, I haven't read, and continued to do what you've been doing. And so those things are pretty much gone. Every once in a while, I'll feel a little zing, but it doesn't stay. This arm right now is staying. So, and that the only pain I have left, I keep telling you, around that area is like that rib area stuff. So there has been improvement.
So about mainly the angle of the chin to the chest. It's really, the biggest secret is whenever this angle gets decreased and the chin comes down, even if you're looking straight forward, so I can look straight forward with my chin. Does that make sense? I'm still looking straight forward. Well, I'm looking straight forward. I understand, but your chin is down.
Right.
And so if this chin is down, we're gaping the wound. So it's like a cut. You're gaping it, which then allows it to swell, inflame, and then occupy space that the nerves are in. So we want to keep the...
Because you didn't hurt when you were doing it, it was when you stood up.
I could feel it going numb in my legs when I was doing it, and that's why I stopped.
Everything starts to swell, and then when she tries to come up, now there's space that's now occupied by fluid, and now there's no room for the nerve, because I think of it like we talked about that hallway analogy. If you have a 3-foot, 1-inch wide hallway, and you have a 3-foot wide dresser, and you need to move it down the hallway, it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to inch your way down. There's no tolerance. Versus if you had a 10-foot wide hallway and a 3-foot wide dresser, you'd have plenty of room. We could just do whatever we wanted, right? So when we're dealing with small dime-sized holes with pencils going through them, there's very little tolerance for the wires. And in the neck especially, there's just smaller tolerances than even the lower back. The neck, millimeter left, millimeter right, you're going to run into the nerve. And how did this happen? And I didn't do anything. Well, it doesn't take much. There's very small tolerances in the neck. She has a favoritism. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's essentially a left head tilt that makes her right shoulder drop. And so she's pinching the left lower part of her neck because there's an injury on the right upper that you're leaning away from. And so it's really the right upper causing a left lower abuse.
That's called biomechanics, Ed.
No, taught her too much. If it's been a month since I've seen you and you're back home and you lay on the dental roll and your arm starts getting worse, or you can't sink in as far because you're noticing, hey, I used to be able to get my head back and now I'm not able to get my head back, everything's gotten stiff again. And that's where you use the adjustment and massage to restore functionality so you can do the stretching properly and get back to your homework. And that's to be done every day. Ideally, at least once a day. I think I told you about my father, where, I think his opinion is that depending on how much injury you have, sometimes you can't go the whole day without doing some stretching. It's almost like your stomach. You can't wake up in the morning and then not feed yourself until 6 p.m. Well, my stomach started hurting at 6 o'clock. Why would my stomach hurt? I didn't feed myself all day. Well, Ed, you got to put something in there. So with the spine, sometimes you might have to do like a mid-morning or a lunchtime stretching, maybe not the whole 20 minutes, but just give your spine something to open everything up again so that you can survive. And maybe you can't go 8 hours without stretching. Maybe you have to do a 5-minute stretch 4 hours into your work, lay down a yoga mat, find somewhere to give your spine a breather for a few minutes, and then you're ready for another 4 hours of work. But that compression, like a sponge, it needs a moment to rehydrate. Even just a millimeter is going to give you a lot of relief. So we're going to keep this arm down. That gives a little bit more space for that nerves on that side. And take a deep breath in for me, Patty. Head back for me. Just keep exhaling. Don't stop. Moved great. Deep breath in. One more. Keep going, keep going. Perfect. That was it. You did great. Yep. It's much softer than it was when you first came over, but the entire thing, Patty, and I think the first time I worked on this, you almost jumped. Like, what in the world? And I think you said nobody really has worked on this spot here. No, other than maybe a little activator on it, right?
Right.
Did the massage lady see it?
She digs in there sometimes,
good.
But not as long as you do.
Okay. She's nicer, Ed.
She responds to my
She's
ouch.
kinder. You don't listen. All right, well, we're not here to play. We're here to fix. I want a friend. You're not my friend anymore. All right. My orthodontist wasn't my friend either. Never liked the guy. Caused more pain every time I went and saw him. He tightened the wires, and I was sore for a week. There we go. There you go. Perfect.
The first time it ever adjusted me, he had to go, "It's okay, honey." He called me honey.
Honey.
I wasn't even your
Honey?
mother-in-law yet.
This side a little bit. Let me touch a little bit that way. Let me have it, Patty. There you go. Did that zing a little bit? How'd that do?
No.
Good.
Both those felt good, and
Yeah.
this didn't zing.
Good. You were just.
So I felt something in my back. That's it, like spasm.
Yeah, you did great. We're just like I said. It's almost like a piano. If I.
Guitarist.
How about this? Maybe that's a better way to think about it. Like if I look at your arm here, Patty, when I touch here, the skin moves a little bit here. That make sense? You see that, Carl? Right. If I touch this skin here, most of the skin moves a lot right around the area I touched it, but there is still a little bit of movement farther away. So when we're adjusting a vertebrae, there's always going to be a little bit of motion in an area that we don't intend there to be motion. Do you follow me? We want to limit that as much as possible, and the amount of benefit that getting your upper neck working can far outweigh a small amount of movement in an area we don't intend. Does that make sense? And when an area is very mad, like kind of like a temper tantrum, it doesn't even take much to upset it. The slightest, like if I, come home leave my shoes on when I come in the door, I'm gonna get them off. Even just the smallest. One time when Carl was pregnant with Charlie, I came home and she said, Ed, I don't know what it is, but you just annoy me. Your presence just annoys me. I didn't even do anything. Right? Just the nerves can be like that. Just even look at them the wrong way. Don't even look at me. Don't even acknowledge me. Don't even want to be touched.
Are you pressing as hard as you were at
Oh, yeah.
the house?
Oh, yeah.
Because then it has
No.
gotten better because
No, yeah.
I'm not in agony this time.
Yeah, be
Well,
nice.
that's good.
Oh yeah. She's doing great. You really come far. No, I think you were jumping. The first time I hit that spot right there, you about.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? There you go. What we call imbibition. The tissue actually imbibes fluid into itself by mobility. So once you restore the mobility, what is it, the Roomba vacuum? It's like an automatic cleaning that happens. And so it doesn't require manual cleaning anymore. And that's what I term homeostasis. Your body becomes not self-sufficient, let's call it, or autonomy. Auto means self, nomi means law, so self-ruling, self-governing, not needing outside help. Your body's supposed to have an autonomy. Now what happens is when we have injuries, right, parts of your neck get stiff, that autonomy shuts down, and that's where I come in, restore the autonomy, get out of the body's so complex, and it humbles me, and when I see the complexity of the body, and I want to get out of its way. I just want to unlock it, allow your body to do what it was intended to do. There's still some sort of crunchy water balloony feeling in there. Like all that shouldn't be. How would you describe them? Kind of fluidy feeling, crunch. This is probably after a few treatments, but there's very little mark. He's still here, and I've been doing this every day, and the marks have not come back as strong as they were the first few days. And eventually nothing will happen. As we work on the tissue, it just becomes pink and there should be no bruising at all. Still some right there a little bit. There's a little bit right there. There we go, perfect, Patty. Right there. See that right there? This is the upper neck facets that are tight and swollen. We're going to get that as clean as we can up here. Get as much motion restored to our upper neck. There it comes. That's that knot that I feel on the right upper, last little pieces of it.
You don't know this, but from this scar, from where I had that surgery, nerves were cut in that shoulder, so I don't have a lot of feeling the surface in that
Right.
shoulder
Jeez.
on the skin.
Poor kid. It's terrible.
No, it just makes it feel okay when you're digging at it or doing that.
Actually, I don't mind it so much because the nerves are good. Solution to surviving an ed adjustment, have all the nerves.
That's for your nerves.
Have the nerves good. First hit this spot also last week. It was fun.
Yeah, that rib, yes.
That was, I think you almost wouldn't let me touch it.
Yes.
It was so tender. Just trying to adjust it when it was that swollen probably just aggravates it. Does that make sense? It's just so upset. Now, it never should have gotten to that point in the first place. It's not the practitioner's fault. Does that make sense? It overflows to a point where now the adjustment now needs to be, taking a back seat to now clean the area up a little bit. It's like vacuuming. Sometimes the room will get so filthy, clothes everywhere, that you shouldn't be vacuuming, right? You got to first tidy up and pick things up, and then you can vacuum. Otherwise, you're going to start sucking up things you don't intend to, hit. And so, very good.
I'm surprised that does not hurt as much as it did if you're doing it just as hard.
Yeah, this spot right here on the right lower. Was it the right leg you felt that when you were the other day when you were sitting? Was it? It's the right
Yes.
leg. So when working on her back the other day, I was noticing this right side is inflamed here on the right, and even though it's not her chief complaint, this is the writing on the walls here of a lower back event that we're not far away from the lower back getting upset. So keeping her middle back moving in the same way as the upper neck takes pressure off the lower neck. The middle back takes pressure off the lower back. Yeah, right there. I mean, how would you want to take over? You want to describe the difference? I mean, how would you? It's all popped up right here. That's how I describe it, but this side is almost relatively nothing compared to.
Yeah, I can feel it bump when you're doing it.
Right there. Has anybody found this thing? Have you ever? Anybody?
No.
No. Okay. Like I said, the three components is called thoracic outlet syndrome. The vertebrae in the neck goes in, the rib in the upper back needs to be pushed down, and then all of the tissue that the nerve sits in needs to be not sore, tender, bruised.
Now that's dinging, pushing there.
Yep. It's just a game of millimeters. Just gotta hold. That's the worst spot right there. That's where it was really tough.
So that's the rib, right?
Well, it's
that you're pushing on?
correct. Yeah, the upper back is where all the ribs, multiple ribs are raised up here.
So my ribs on this side don't ever hurt when you do that.
They're lower. They're not as high, so we call it subluxation, or the misalignment is a lot smaller. And this was just everywhere a couple days ago. What'll happen is it'll just be little pieces here and there. You won't have the vast amount that we had initially. just shines a light on what's trapped inside your body. Like right there, you can feel that, Patty? Up here,
Mhm.
these ribs, the injury up here, a little higher on the left, but. It most directly correlates with what the patient almost tell me where the marks are going to come out. Because you can feel when I'm rubbing over a sore
Mhm.
area and go, oh, it must be where it's coming out.
I can, right where you are right now,
Mhm.
I can feel that.
Yep,
So,
yep. There's-
it burns.
Yep, that's what's internal in there. The tissue is congested. And as we stimulate blood flow, it washes out and helps to speed up the replacement.
It didn't itch though this time. Sometimes when you've done that to me,
Yeah.
I'll get this intense itch.
Itch in there. Yeah, it's from the nerve irritants that are trapped in there. We call them cytokines, inflammatory chemical mediators that the mobility is what's supposed to wash all that out of there. It's like a waste product. So when there's stiffness, tightness, injury, it traps the acidity in the tissue.
This was the absolute worst the other day, and I thought, you're gonna break my rib.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep, that hurts still. Okay, that hurt.
All right. I know.
Okay.
Oh,
Ow.
ow. Get you, Ed. Yeah, I got you. All right.
Yeah, that's better. You get past that point and it's okay. Oh. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Just
Being
not,
run over by a tractor.
not up there, Ed.
Yes.
Try to let your head sink into it and master 20 minutes. So we're still about, that's about not that far from the ground.
Okay.
Your neck should be easily able to, the back of your head should easily be able to touch the ground. If your range of motion was, we've lost the ability for those vertebrae to slide forward and for the curve to go into your neck. And it just takes time for like clay, for the neck to mold over that device. How do we get in the car?
Yeah.
None of this.
No.
There we go. That's the cool way to get in. It's just as you find the seat, open the door.
Right.
And then you get out. Not getting out like. It's just not the cool way to do it.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Oh, I love you back.
Dr. McLaughlin.
Okay, love you.